Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Saturday Morning Gaming Show. It is February 22nd, 2020, and I'm your co-host, Fat Wizard, joined today by...
Alamaxia.
And Lobos.
And today we're playing Duke Nukem 3D for the PC. This game was released in 1996, and gents, I've got to say, I had forgotten how good, like legitimately good, Duke Nukem was.
Right? I
it was
had
very
never
good.
played a Duke Nukem game before this. I did not know what I was getting myself into, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, actually, one thing I should mention here is Duke Nukem is very much a product of the 90s and has a lot of themes that aren't really consistent with kind of today's society. We're going to do our best to sort of like not really discuss some of these themes, but just be aware that this episode may not be appropriate for younger listeners. All right, so you start off in the first level, and really, really iconic. Like in my mind, this is right up there with the first level in Doom. You start out kind of jumping out of an airplane, and Duke's like, "Those aliens shot up my ride," and you just have a very, very small room, kind of outside, and immediately you just blow up some barrels and open up a passage to go kill some aliens. And I got to say, it's pretty fantastic. The game starts with you blowing up a huge set of barrels, and it sort of like sets the tone for the game, right?
It really shows you that you can affect the environment with explosions. There's more to the game than just walking down corridors.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you folks saw, we just got this in the video, but you can actually get a rocket launcher in the first, 30 seconds of the game. So I got to commend a game that's just kind of like, hey, we realize the rocket launcher in traditional first-person shooter games, that's something you get like maybe a third to halfway through the game. Duke's just like, hey, that's what the game's about. Just blow up stuff and have fun. So I don't know if anyone else saw that. It's a little bit of a secret, but yeah, you can pick that up right away.
Yeah, they really don't ease you into your weapons too much. It's kind of, all right, we're just going to throw some things that make things go boom at you, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun just to not feel like I have to play for 4 hours before I get the big explodey things.
Yeah, right off the bat for me, the big thing. So we did. I played Doom not too long ago, and the comparison here, because I mean, people might see this and just say, "Oh, it's just a Doom clone." And yes, it's an FPS, like everybody says about every game today. But there's definitely some things that were a lot different that I wasn't expecting for this sort of game, like Doom, Duke, like Hollow Duke, like to to distract enemies or various things like that. I just wasn't expecting.
The jetpack.
Yeah.
The jetpack.
Yeah, there's a fun. There's a lot of little toys to play with. Alamaxia said, yeah, there's the jetpack that you can use to fly around with. You've got the Hollow Duke. You have like a health pack. I'm trying to think. You've got steroids that you can use to go faster. So lots of little toys. And so let's talk a little bit about how the game is structured. So the original Duke Nukem 3D came out with 3 episodes, very traditional, like, Doom had 3 episodes, and each of those episodes has, let's call it like 9 to 11 levels. And then about 6 months after the game was released in 96, there was a 4th episode that was added. And then actually very recently, within, I want to say like the last year or two, there was a 5th episode. But because we're kind of looking only at retro stuff, 20 years or more, we only covered the first 4 episodes. So the episode names are LA Meltdown, and then let's see, the second episode is called
It's Lunar Apocalypse.
Yeah, Lunar Apocalypse, that's right. And episode 3 is Shrapnel City. Episode 4 is called The Birth. And the way that I've got this structured is we're going to be spending about 15 minutes in each one of these. So they're going to be coming pretty quickly. We're going to try to cover just the real highlights of each episode as I saw them. But to give a little bit of a context into who is Duke. Lobos, why don't you tell us, like, if you were to describe Duke, how do you put that into words?
Duke,
a man of
Duke is
so
like
many talents.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, but also he's super, like, I don't know. He's just here he's a big punk, and he's always the top dude, and he's nobody's ever above him, and he's here to just, the voice they give him, John St. John, is just, hey, how you doing?
So good.
I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum. Blah, blah, blah. It's, I don't know. It's very, very over the top, just like.
Well, so the thing is, I'm legitimately unsure if they are sort of acknowledging, kind of winking, the 90s action hero trope, or they legitimately think that the 90s trope is like the best thing in the world, and they're actually just like doubling down on that. It's really hard to tell. It's, you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, you're kind of making fun of him, but at the same time, like, Duke's like kind of serious.
Well, I mean, and I feel like you get that sort of sense playing it. You're like, oh, this is so like over the top, like explosions everywhere, but this is fun. This is awesome. Yeah. Like, all right, I'll keep going. I'll keep playing.
I got a lot of self-awareness in it.
Yeah.
Just the way a lot of the little Easter eggs, or not really Easter eggs, but little details were put into the game, the way they would word some of even the posters that you would see put around the game, which there's a lot of fun detail in just the artwork that they put into it, instead of just the models of the characters and everything. There's things on the wall that will make you laugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like one of the things, we were just fighting some cops. So of course, the cops are pigs, large pigs,
right? And
they wear a shirt that says LARD, lard. Obviously a play on LAPD. So that's kind of like the type of stuff that they use puns a lot, and they kind of do poke fun at just society as a whole, I think.
And the reasoning behind that is that the aliens came back to Earth, and they were actually basically infecting and changing all the humans, and they chose for the cops to be pigs.
Yes. And so Duke is really here to basically, he wants to save all the women of Earth, which have more or less been abducted, and then kill all the aliens that are really kind of messing up his day.
They shot up his ride.
They shot up his ride. I want to talk a little bit about his look, because I do think, Lobos was spot on. He is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got the crew cut. He barely fits into his shirt. Like, his muscles have muscles on them. And he's got these, sunglasses. And he wears these sunglasses everywhere. And so, it's hard not to just kind of look at him and be like, that guy looks cool, And maybe in an ironic sense.
Right.
But he's kind of cool looking.
He's like the high schooler in his Letterman jacket who's like in the corner leaning against the wall like, yeah, this is my place. And you're like, oh gosh, all right, whatever.
So
Hail
this
to the
game,
king, baby.
Awesome. Now this game uses something called the build engine. It didn't use the id Tech engine used by like Doom and Quake. But it's very similar in terms of how the technology works. So it is I shouldn't say fully. It's mostly 3D. The creatures are actually 2D sprites. Again, much like how Doom worked, where the 2D sprites kind of face you and shoot you, but you can see that they're kind of rotating. They're very flat. But I think that does a pretty good job of selling the experience. Do you guys kind of agree with that?
Oh yeah, but there were some times that it really worked against you. Whenever you had an enemy that was directly above or directly below you, because it was a 2D sprite, you like have this 1 pixel line you're looking at, and some of the enemies would charge and explode at you on sight. So you'd be looking for this line coming straight at you and suddenly explode. You're like, oh my god, that's where it was.
Yeah, I think that's exacerbated by the fact that you do get a jetpack in this. So there's a lot more verticality than, say, Doom, where things might be above you and there are some flying enemies, but really, like, you can fly and everything else becomes lines. And it's like, well, what am I doing here?
Yep, exactly.
But
So
I do want to just highlight some of the mechanics they have in this, like some of the special guns. Like we saw earlier in the video we're watching, how there's a shrink ray and it'll make you tiny, and also enemies tiny, and that allows you access to through vents that I think you need to in future levels, as well as you can just kind of step on enemies that have been squished, and it's actually really powerful for some of the bigger enemies. That I use that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the weapons are just fun weapons to use. I think if you contrast it against something where Doom and Quake, it's like though each weapon really had a situation you'd want to use it on. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Duke, I kind of just felt that I was swapping weapons just because I wanted to have some fun. Like, you talked about the shrink ray. The shrink ray makes them very small, and then you walk over and you can squish them. You have some laser trip mines, which actually aren't very good, but you attach it to a wall, and then when enemies cross and trip it, it'll blow up. There's also a freeze ray, which will, when you do enough damage, it freezes them and you can shatter them. I honestly felt that the shotgun was probably the most versatile weapon, and I found that was kind of the thing I was using the most.
I would agree with that, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and you do get a lot of ammo for the shotgun, and the chain gun, which is another weapon. That's sort of your basic machine gun. It's actually tilted on its side, so there's 3 barrels that go horizontally, and so it's a very unique looking weapon, but it is pretty effective to just kind of mow down enemies. But yeah, I would use the shotgun to pop in, shoot one of the cops, and then go back into cover while it reloads, because it's a pump action shotgun.
And I was surprised with a shotgun that there wasn't really much of a spread to the bullets. Like, you could shoot things pretty far away and it would still do quite a bit of damage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Here's another weapon I'm using, the pipe bomb.
Oh yeah.
And you could actually, I don't know if you guys saw, but you can actually lay down multiple pipe bombs and then explode them all at once. I remember as a kid, one thing I did is I basically cheated on the game, and I went and I threw as many like 500 pipe bombs in one room just to see what happened, and I crashed the game. The explosions are so big.
Oh man.
Fantastic. Yeah. But you did leave out possibly one of the best weapons, which is usable when you have any weapon out, and that is Duke's foot, because you can just kick everybody. So there would be moments where I was just I think you could have both feet kicking, alternating, because there's a default foot button, and then you could also like equip like melee, like unarmed, and then you would be kick, and it was I actually used it in certain situations if I ran out of ammo or if I was just really close range.
Well, I think this is the last level of episode 1, and you're presented with a boss, which actually becomes a standard enemy later on. But you go into this arena, and it's this huge, he's probably like 2 or 3 times the size of Duke. He kind of looks like a dinosaur with armor, and he's got this chain gun, or it's more of a minigun that's kind of off to his side. And it's a pretty straightforward fight. Just do lots of damage. But then we get to what's iconic about Duke is his sort of sassy outro. When you finish an episode, Duke kind of like taunts the enemy, and he does some unpleasant things to his head there with a shotgun, I believe. But after that, you get a nice little text right up there, which more or less tells you that the aliens have stolen the women and they have gone off to space. And Duke, none too pleased with that. He's like, no one steals our women and lives. So you go then on to the next episode, which was Lunar Apocalypse. What's this level like, guys?
We are in space.
Yeah, you start out, I guess you're in Duke's ship, because it's a very small area, and then there's a window outside, and you can see a space base and then a moon. I gotta admit, I wasn't a huge fan of Lunar Apocalypse as a whole. One of the things I really enjoy about Duke, and why I like the other episodes more, is I feel Duke works best when they they try to mirror what life is in terms of building levels that are reminiscent of society. So later on, there's like a level called Duke Burger where it's like, hey, this is just a restaurant. And you're going through that, and it's super fun. There's one that's like a post office. The Lunar Apocalypse is mostly out in space. And so it's more abstract. It feels more like a traditional, I want to say, I keep going back to Doom or Quake, but I think they're apt comparisons. It feels kind of more like a traditional one of those where it's like, yeah, you're in space and there's aliens, but there's nothing I can ground myself in. And I always feel like Duke works best when he's grounded in reality a little bit.
Yeah, another thing I found with the space levels is that there was a lot of backtracking and re-going back to the same areas where I felt like some of the other levels they weren't really linear, but you felt a progression as you went through them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and the space levels, for the most part, just ended up being a lot of just metal walls and like an elevator here and there. And you could look outside and see space, and that was cool.
Yeah. But that was one of my favorite bits is just like, oh, man, look at that moon. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was
great. One of the things
we
recently did there is we got on a lift that went through space. Like you got to look out a window and see this lift go from this other spaceport, zoom across space, come pick you up, and you got to zoom across with it. I thought that was just a really fun thing to do.
That was one of my favorite things in the space level. So I applaud that. And again, there are moments of real brilliance in these levels, and they are legitimately fun to look at for a period of time. But like I think Lobos, you hit it dead on. It's like eventually it's just kind of iron or steel walls, and it loses its identity, I think, a little bit. When we're talking about the episodes, it's very clear that each episode is crafted in a way that you can kind of jump in and with no weapons and start from scratch. So once you completed episode 1, you can move on to the next episode, and there's no expectation that you had completed episode 1. They kind of ramp you up pretty quickly about getting you the new weapons. If you think it more of a traditional first-person shooter, it's one of those, you have constant progression kind of from the start to the end. But this one is like, no, we're going to give you all the items you need. And in fact, it's almost like each level was designed to be like, this level is self-contained, and I do feel that you could jump into any level without any weapons and still have a pretty considerably balanced time and actually, progressing through the level and collecting your upgrades.
Go ahead.
Certainly, depending on which difficulty you do. I think I was doing the second hardest difficulty, and at some points I was left with just my pistol. More early on, and especially if you're fighting like the flying like pigs and their little mobiles, and then they're all shooting at you, and those are easy to dodge. But then once they drop out of it, and then they're hitting you with the shotguns, they're basically instant attacks. So the only way to dodge is to be out of line of sight, pretty much. So
yeah, that sounds rough. The pistol itself is actually pretty poor because the accuracy on that is just all over the place.
Yeah.
If you're not up in the monster's face, you're just not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
I first was trying to use the pistol to take out the turrets that you would see around levels, because there aren't just enemies that you have to worry about. Throughout the levels, there are going to be just turrets that are going to start firing at you, and you can blow them up. Usually a shotgun blast or two will take them out. But if you can hit it with the pistol a few times, then you save yourself some shotgun ammo or chain gun ammo, whatever your weapon of choice is. But I started using the pistol a lot for just like the low level grunts that you would come across, because a few shots at them, they weren't really doing much damage. But trying to use that pistol on maybe like one of the lizards that have the chain gun, no, that wasn't going to happen. I was just going to take way too much damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were the enemies that are basically flying drones that would suicide into you and explode. And I hit quick load so many times, just working my way so that I would run close enough to it or just skirt by it, but then get out of range when it explodes so that I wouldn't take damage, so that I could save ammo.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Those suicide guys, often you'd walk into a room and there'd be like a guy off to the side as you immediately enter, and he just like, hey, you're right here, might as well blow up.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, come on. One thing I wanted to applaud this game for, and I like it when games allow you to get stuck, as weird as that sounds. There are situations where, in order to progress, you need a jetpack or you need an explosive. And, there may be a set amount of those resources on a level. And, hey, if you are out of those, then restart the level, right? And so we just saw a scenario where, as far as I could tell, there's two ways to jump this gap that is needed to continue the crypt path. You can either use a jetpack, which I was actually out of, so I couldn't use that anymore, or you could use steroids, and that steroids would allow you to jump further. But as far as I could tell, it's essentially there's these two platforms, and I couldn't find a way to connect the two platforms. There's just a very large gap between those. And that level was Fusion Station. I was trying to figure out which one that was. But yeah, that one is kind of focused around having a jetpack. And so jetpack is sort of a rare thing in the levels. And they do a lot of cool things where if you happen to have a jetpack like later on in the levels, so let's say that you get a jetpack in level 3, and then maybe at level 6, it's like, hey, if you still have the jetpack here, you can fly up here and get a really cool secret. So I really enjoyed those sorts of secrets to find.
Yeah, and I think that jetpack also empowers you to potentially like skip certain things and get other places early. And just in general, when I'm playing these games a lot, I before I decide to use a significant amount of ammo or fuel or whatever it is, I always make a quick save or a hard save even, just in case like I needed that later. So if you're not doing that, you could run into trouble later for sure.
Yeah. I certainly kind of did the same thing where, especially when you get to a thing that looks like a boss room and you're like, all right, I'm going to try to use some of my ammo that I don't use a lot of. Again, like the laser mines, the AI aren't super great about like actually running into your laser trip mines, so I didn't find that I used those a whole lot. But I did want to kind of use them up, so I'm not using all my other ammo. But I was only playing on the second difficulty, so it sounds like Lobos, you're playing on a little bit harder than me. How about you, Alamaxia? What difficulty were you playing on?
I was the same as you, Wiz, and for me, I did notice early in the levels, especially early in the acts, it was kind of tight on the ammo, but once I got a few levels in, and as long as I was able to continue the previous level with my ammo, then by the third or fourth level in the act, it really wasn't much of a problem.
Yeah, I had kind of the same experience as well. We just entered a level called Tiberius Station, and I got a real Aliens vibe from this one in particular because there's a lot of air ducts you have to crawl through. And it doesn't help that one of the enemies is literally a face sucker. It's green, and it doesn't have legs. It's just it's like a little slime that crawls on the ground, but it jumps up on your screen and then has like these little teeth and just suck on your face. And that can hurt you pretty bad there.
I think they would scare the heck out of you sometimes.
Yeah,
too.
sometimes, yeah. I think my tactic in general was if I wasn't dealing with anything else, I would sit there and just spam kick, and if they got in range, you could just smash them that way.
Just kicking away at them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I really want to talk about, because this is one of my favorite things in Duke, was finding the secrets. Because the secrets are just so creatively hidden, and there very rarely did I find all the secrets on a level. And the secrets are those that are deceptively difficult to find. Like, there's a lot of things where you're like, oh, cool, I found a hidden health pack. That's not a secret. A secret is more like, oh, you flipped a switch that opened up a door over here, and then you went in there, and then you went through a false wall, and boom, that's the secret. And so how did you guys do on your secrets? I think I generally found like about half of them per level.
I'm usually a 50%er or so for secrets, and I'll spend... if I think there's a secret nearby, I'll spend a couple of minutes trying to figure out, but I won't just sit there until I get it. But yeah, there's a lot of rewarding secrets where you can find, good good weapons early in the episodes, or maybe just a nice stockpile of ammo or health. And some of them are pretty fun. Like there was a couple of series of like switches that you'd have to hit in the correct order to unlock secrets and various things like that.
Yeah, and my favorite that they would have is you would see, especially in the place where now the lunar apocalypse, where you'd see out a window and there may be like some items out the window, and you're like, oh, how do I get out that window?
Yeah.
And then you start like, all right, are there any secret doors around here? Do things loop around? And so like they do a great job on taunting you.
Yeah.
About secrets.
At some point, I found myself, as I was going through levels, just spamming my action button at walls to see what would open up.
You're like, All right, now here's a part I really want to talk about, because this is one of the coolest things about Duke. So to set up the scenario, there is a tram, and there are these security cams that you can look in and see what's on the other side of the tram.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see that on the other side of the tram are some aliens, right? And so you can just go, they're pretty easy to kill, and you can just go in there and kill them. But I'm like, what if I put a pipe bomb on the tram, send the pipe bomb over, and then look through the security cam and blow it up? Sure enough, it blows up all the aliens.
Awesome.
And you're like, that's amazing. Like it's
That is
again,
incredible.
it's one of these emergent gameplay things that makes the player feel like they've kind of done one over on the game.
Right.
And I absolutely love it when there's that sort of creative puzzle solving. And again, I could have just jumped in there and killed them all with a shotgun, no big deal. But it allows me to play around with the game a little bit, and I really enjoyed that.
The game
Yeah.
does reward creativity, and that was refreshing.
Yeah, the security camera system, just in general, is pretty cool because in some spots they have some nice setups so that you can check on certain areas if you know you're going to be backtracking a bunch, or if you hit a switch and something happens and you're like, oh, what happened? And you can check it out there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like there's a big thing of armor over on that box.
Yep.
I didn't see that before. And so sometimes they very creatively position things to be like, oh yeah, did you make sure to get this secret over here?
Mm-hmm.
So we are still kind of going to kill the main boss here in episode 2, Lunar Apocalypse. We just got to a part that kind of reminiscent of 2001 Space Odyssey. You see this black pillar, and you actually can warp in there, and it brings you to the alien space station, or like one of their stations. And what's really cool, if you look at the area around it, they have these space suits that are lined the walls, but they're skeletons in the space suits.
Spooky.
Spooky skeletons. So I don't know if the assumption there is that people had come there before and then they were killed and they strung up the dead people on the walls, or like what that is.
Well, I
But it
think
certainly looks
the
cool.
levels we were just in weren't those kind of more of a human design? They weren't really alien, and I think these are all of the crew members that were on that ship.
Ah, yes.
Right.
Great point.
Abducted. Also, speaking of the movie Aliens, the eggs in these levels look exactly like the eggs like from the front of Alien. Yeah.
We are in the last level of episode 2. It's called Overlord. Well, I actually shouldn't say we're at the last level, because technically there are secret levels. And I think in my playthrough I found one, and they are a lot of fun to check out. And I think when you find an exit, there's a thing that's like secret level or something like that. Did you guys find these secret levels?
I want to say I found one, but I don't remember what the actual level was.
Yeah.
I
Now, we're on
found some in, I'm wanting to say the third or the fourth act. One of them I did find
Yes.
a couple of secret levels.
I think it's likely we all found the same one, because I think it was kind of easy to see.
Yeah.
We're on the last boss here. This one reminds me a lot of a Rancor from
Yeah.
Star Wars that happens to have 2 rockets on its shoulders, like rocket-mounted shoulders that they're just firing at you. Again, I'm quite certain the idea was this is a Rancor from Star Wars, because they
Right.
certainly wear their inspiration on their chest. But again, you kill him, and you go to a little movie scene, and Duke really needs to relieve himself, and he does so in the privacy of the body of the alien you just killed. And it's kind of cute. in like a a dark way where he pulls up a paper, reading a newspaper, and he kind of whistles the Duke Nukem theme, and it's just like, oh, Duke, you're sort of like this really annoying guy, but I kind of like you at the same. Like I can't. I guess what I'm saying is I can't figure out if I like Duke or I hate him, but I think it's like a mixture of both, right? Where he's like, as long as he's on your side, you're
Right.
like, yeah, Duke, you're one of us. But if he was an enemy, I'd be like, Duke, you're just not cool.
I like how he's written. I like that it's consistent with just how he's just that uber macho. I'm going to kill everything in my path, and it's just like that's Duke. It's fun.
Now we are on episode 3, Shrapnel City, and we are back to Earth. I don't actually remember the storyline of why we came back to Earth, but I do appreciate that we're now back into what I like about Duke is they kind of take a real world inspiration. In this one, it seems to be like like a sushi parlor / maybe karaoke bar that would be in like Japan or something, or
Yes,
China.
it's definitely Japanese restaurant themed, and all of the levels in this act, Shrapnel City, they all have some particular fun theme to the entire level that's unique to that level.
Now here's something that's kind of fun. I know, Lobos, because I was watching your stream, you noticed the same thing. In the game there is water, and you can go under the water, and enemies can go under the water. And you can throw things like pipe bombs under the water, but the way the game works is it almost treats them as separate layers. So if you're above water, you can't really influence things that are underwater, and vice versa.
Yeah.
If you're underwater, you can't really influence things like blowing them up or kill stuff, which is really weird because enemies actually kind of treat the water. If they're walking on the water, they will actually do the pig has an animation where he'll kind of lay down and fire at you, and he'll actually do that on the top of the water, right? As opposed to like sinking. So it's a little weird, but once you realize it, you're like, okay, I have to be under the water to actually kill anyone in there.
Right. Well, you can use that to your advantage because you can kind of peek out and recover as you're trying to take out some underwater enemies, and just say, all right, maybe I'll approach from over here. I'll jump in this side, take some shots, jump back out. And it can help you in that manner.
Yeah.
And it definitely got to the point where I could expect certain enemies to be underwater. Like I'd see a body of water and think, that's not safe for me to jump in right now.
Yeah. We're in a level called Bankroll, and I love this because it's sort of like you just see this huge vault. It is one of these, traditional high security banks you'd think of in a movie. And it wasn't until I was editing the video that I realized later on there's this sort of puzzle you go around. We'll be seeing it in the next couple of seconds here. But you're actually rotating the tumblers of the bank vault to actually open it.
Oh, nice.
And I when I was playing that, I didn't make the association, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And because the tumblers are large scale, like the size of the building, right? And you rotate them around, and then you can enter the vault. And again, everything in this game is so well put together in terms of they thought out what does this area look like. And then they have fun with it. We're like, well, we don't need to be exact, but it's like, what would Duke's version of a bank vault look like?
Right.
Building sized tumblers, and then you open it, and for some reason there's just tons of aliens there.
One thing I really want to point out with the level design is how they were able to take these things like the tumblers and even fit secrets inside of them. So you would have these gears that would come together, but some of the gears would not be there. Like there'd be a separation between them where you could actually fit Duke and get behind in these crevices that otherwise you would think, oh, I'm just going to die trying to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I many times I would spin the tumblers around. I'm like, okay, can I get in here? Can I get in there? And often there'd be a situation where it's like, well, if you do these two in a row at a certain way, then you can go access the other area, but they have to both be lined up.
Yeah, there's a couple spots where there's these big turning gears, and if you observe, like, one of the teeth of one of the gears is missing, so you can step in there and follow it as it turns around and then gain access to another area.
Yep. The next level we're in is called Flood Zone, and this is an interesting one. I'm not usually a huge water level guy. I actually don't know that I've met really anyone that enjoys water levels, but I think in terms of water levels, this is kind of as good as you're going to get. The idea here is that it's a city that's been flooded about halfway, and you're constantly going in a building, but it's underwater. And so you do have scuba gear. That is an option. But again, you only have a limited amount of that scuba gear. And when that runs out, then you're like, okay, well, I need to be able to go into this building, get everything, come out before drowning. And so that was kind of exhilarating to navigate those scenarios.
It was also frustrating to navigate because a lot of the area in that particular level, really looked and felt the same, even from above. So I kept finding myself backtracking, and I think I spent a good 10 minutes at one point just trying to find the next door I needed to go into, because I was like, where is this?
Yeah, I will agree with that. There's definitely some issues I found in there as well. I think we're going to skip on to the next one, which is the movie set. This one's cool because it's got that Hollywood-esque warehouse look. And, Duke kind of just like, there's a lot of conspiracy in Duke, right? And one of these is you go to one of the sets and lo and behold, there's the moon landing set up. And I'm like, okay, I can appreciate that kind of like, in a joking way. I'm like, yeah, okay. You do get the sense that the government is sort of like controlling, like, I would not be surprised if Duke is like, no, the Illuminati's real. Like, no, seriously. They came, I saw them. I saw someone take off their lizard head and so.
Well, he's fighting lizards.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, this is really cool because you get to go into a lot of different little sets here. One being almost like a Star Trek one, I guess, as we see sort of the spaceship, and then we had like the moon landing one, and so I think there's a couple other ones that you can explore, but really thematically strong to really set the stage, and you're like, yeah, this is what I would think of it when I see movie set, like a Hollywood movie set. And also, I should note that Duke is firmly in LA, right? So
right.
That when you look at everything, is like, think of it in like kind of like this 90s Californian context.
Yeah.
Even just in terms of the character. Now, we've completed many levels, probably 20-ish levels. But there's one thing I want to talk about now that we've seen over and over and over is when you complete the level, it's like a little nuke. And often you have to break the glass. You shatter the glass with your foot or the gun, and he just like takes his fist and slams it on the nuke. And
it's
I guess
a big self-destruct button.
Is the intent that he's like, I'm gonna clean up the aliens for good by nuking this area, or like I don't know. What do you guys think he's doing there?
It's a good question. I mean, that's what I think. I made that. I made that like reference when I was playing. I was like, oh, I guess we're done with this place. So just nuke it to the ground, make sure nothing survives.
Duke doesn't seem like he's really like he cares too much about collateral damage.
No.
He's not very surgical in his approach. No,
it's fitting. It's fitting. It seems.
And speaking of that collateral damage, another thing that we've seen over and over is the fact that there's a lot of environment that you can blow up, a lot of environment that you can affect, and sometimes you actually have to blow up large parts of the environment to even proceed in the level. Like, you can hit a button and that'll set off a series of explosions that'll level a building out from in front of you, and there's how you progress in the level. Or a wall will explode away, a ton of enemies will come through, and there's an entrance within that wall that just exploded away. So the level that you see as you're going through changes as things get fired. You might accidentally shoot a rocket and a wall will explode in the distance, and you go, oh, what's back there?
Yeah, I think the level you're talking about is like the second or third level in the first episode, where there's just, you see... There's some note that's like what do they call it? It's just some zone. They're like, hey, this is a decommissioned zone or something, and you go and you just slam on the button, and it's like, oh, the building blows up, and you proceed there. So yeah, and again, we just walked through an area that exploded, and now we're moving up to continue to complete the level here. There's a huge fire truck there, which for some reason, I don't know, I just love seeing that fire truck. It's a big red fire truck, and I don't know why it's there other than the level's name is Fahrenheit. Like, I might have forgotten. Do you guys know were we actually in like
We were in a fire station.
A fire station, okay. Okay, that's what that was then. Yeah, because again, each of the levels here, we were kind of looking at for like a minute or two. So some of them are kind of chopped up in a way where it's a little hard to tell exactly what the levels themed at. This level here is Hotel Hell, which I guess it's just like a large hotel that you can go through. I remember this area as being really cool because they have a lot of like little secret walls and stuff. So there are some windows in here that have enemies that clearly are jumping in and out, and you're like, okay, cool, I can do the same thing. But some of the windows, if I remember right, they're textured so they look like they're solid, but you can actually just walk through them. And so you find little secrets that way. And additionally, Alamaxia, you were talking about environmental interactions. Often you'll find like a cash register or a bookcase or a painting, and then you can use that, and it might open up a door nearby. And so often it'd be like, okay, I found a place. Just go try to use everything that looks like it might be, a usable item.
And sometimes, if you have a good eye, you can say that panel's shaded just a little bit different.
I can see the seams. There's some way to open this.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of using stuff, of course, there's the toilet you can use, and that has a real purpose because that will you can do it every once in a while and restore 10 health. You can also kick fire hydrants or rather blow them up, and then also toilets, and it will spout water, and you can sit there and drink the water.
Yep.
And get one hit point back at a time. And I'm sure if you're playing at harder difficulties, that's probably essential, right?
I did that once or twice for sure. I think on the burger restaurant level that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're on the very last level of episode 3, Stadium, of course. This would have been the final boss of the original game, and of course, Duke Nukem, he's fighting on a football field. Honestly, where else would Duke's final fight be?
Not just any football field; it's his football field. It's on top of a skyscraper because it's got his name right there. So
I didn't realize that. And of course, you kill the enemy. And to taunt this one, he kicks the back of his head. His eyeball goes through a field goal post, and Duke's like, it's good. It's just like Duke. He's so comical about this.
Lovable Duke.
The boss though was actually pretty easy. I think I just used the Devastator, which is sort of like, it's almost like a machine gun for rockets.
Yeah, mini rockets. But I would say a lot of the bigger enemies are pretty easy on their own, just because they shoot like projectiles that have travel time, and you can just run in circles. That's a lot of the case for these sorts of early FPSs, except for like, chain gun users that the bullets have instant no travel time or things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of it's just circle strafing. Mm-hmm. Now we're now on episode 4, The Birth, and immediately I fell in love with this because you start, a colonel is talking to you with a cigar, and you put on like these thick rim black glasses, and he's like, I'm going in, and you go in, and the mission's the level is called It's Impossible, and it's basically Mission Impossible the movie. And it's like they're even playing the music that is super reminiscent of it, right?
Yeah, it's like a very obvious like duplicate of it, kind of. And the sign in the front said, what is it, like improbable mission or something like that? No, mission building.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like, oh, that's so good. And then the goal is there's this white room. If you think of I actually don't know if the movie was out at the time, but if you think of that iconic scene from the Tom Cruise one where he's jumping down It's a Mission Possible, and he's got the wires, and he's kind of going from the ceiling down to the ground in this white room. Is very reminiscent of that, right? Where it's kind of like you get the sense that there's not a lot of ways in, and then you just had to infiltrate this area and activate. I don't know exactly what you're activating, but
there's a lot of aimless clicking.
Yeah, that was one thing. So often there would be these little switches, and you have to depress the correct order of switches. And that's pretty easy when there's only 3 switches, because there's only, 6 combinations. But when there's 4 switches, it become a little bit more cumbersome to have to go, try every single combination. But one of the nice things about it is you don't need to actually use the item, because you can actually, I think you press the E key for use. Mm-hmm. But you could also shoot the things, which is, of course, that's Duke. He's like, I'm just gonna shoot the switches. But you complete that, and you open up the vault here, and I'm actually not sure again what we're trying to do. The beginning of the episode, of course, showed a woman who looked like maybe was birthing aliens or something, hence the name. And maybe, I think what we find is maybe the government was experimenting on I don't know. I'm just theorizing here.
He's literally just sending you to stop the aliens, because the aliens are invading Earth and trying to take over. They've already taken over LA, and this guy's like, hey, we need you to stop these aliens from doing things to other cities. Here's what they're doing to people.
Yeah, and because the message I got was because you infiltrate the facility, and then you open a door and there's a brand new enemy. It's like a big, it's like a reptile, and he's got an interesting attack because he'll actually shrink you, and then he'll also claw you. But this was there's actually 2 new enemies in the episode 4 here. There's that alien thing, and then there's also one of these pig cops that has a little tank that he's driving around.
It's a pig in a tank.
The big tanks.
Now we're in one of my favorite levels, which was called is it Duke Burger? Let's see, Duke Burger, yeah, and
welcome to Duke Burger, home of the Duke Burger. Oh, wrong thing.
And you get there. I actually had a lot of difficulties finding out how to get into the Duke Burger, because again, it's a fast food chain complete with a drive-through place where there's a little board you can order from. If you try to order, he's just like, "Go away, we're closed." But I applaud the game and its tenacity, or its willingness to really make you explore every section of the level to try to figure out how to get in. I think I spent probably 10-15 minutes running around the same building over and over and over trying to be like, how do I get in? And they kind of hide a key card in a place that's not super obvious. I don't know. Did you guys have any issues finding that key card?
It took me a few minutes for sure, especially because there were a bunch of these flying pigs just circling the entire building. So I wanted to make sure I got them all down because they were a pain.
When you get into Duke Burger, one of the first places you go to is the bathroom. And you look at the mirror, and on the wall written behind you, and once you look at the wall through the mirror, the letters invert and it says "Think smaller." And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that they want me to shrink myself because I can see a little tiny hole there, but how do I do that? Mm-hmm. Right? Alamaxia, did you figure out how to do that pretty quickly? How to shrink yourself?
Yeah, I unfortunately spoiled myself. I was watching Lobos when he went through this, so so I spoiled that puzzle for me. But it definitely, I don't think it would have taken me too long to figure it out, considering some of the other puzzles that we had to go through to get here.
Well, see, the way that I originally figured it out, though, was they had the enemy type that would shrink you, and so I actually had him shrink me and send me through there. But you are intended to necessarily just shoot the mirror with your shrink ray, and then it shrinks yourself, and then you can get through.
Now, of course, me in the Duke mindset, another one of the new weapons in this game is the expander. So the shrinker will shrink things, the expander expands things. Again, me being in the Duke mindset, I'm like, what if I go to the mirror and it try to expand myself? Can I make Duke even bigger? Sadly, no, but that would have been really awesome. We finished up that level, Duke Burger. One of the things kind of made me sad was you find out that Duke Burgers are made with dogs.
Oh no,
like,
yeah,
not cool. Yeah,
yeah. There's a whole pen of dogs kept up there. It's no.
And I think we're in. We might have skipped around a little bit. If we're in shopping, I think we went to Shop and Bag briefly.
Yeah,
and that's like a convenience store. I don't know if this is the same level, but this is no. This is Pigsty, because you essentially infiltrate a cop place, and one of the areas you see is like a little interrogation thing where there's a camera pointed in, and then a chair and a desk, and you can see blood on the wall behind them. And then you get near the end of the level, and it looks like a judge room, and of course, the judge, jury, and executioner up there is the boss from the end of episode 1, the dude with the chain gun. I thought that was kind of a nice nod to be like, yeah, okay. That's how they sentence Duke, is to death here. After that, from here I actually got to go. I found a secret level, and so we are jumping in Area 51.
Oh,
same secret level I found.
Okay, awesome. And I don't really remember if there's anything notable about this one.
I remember this one being very difficult to figure out exactly where you need to go. It was very puzzle laden.
Yeah, I could see that. One of the things I do like about this is you go to Area 51. First of all, there's a sign that's like Area 51 right here. But also there's is it just like a Winnebago sitting outside of Area 51? Where it's like, yeah, that's government surveillance, right? I told you, it's an Illuminati. So you break into Area 51, and the secret levels are... I do feel like, as fun as Duke is on their levels, I always feel like the secret levels, they kind of just go a little bit further and make it a little crazier, a little bit more zany. And so I can appreciate that. I do remember Area 51. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because one of the things you do at the end of Area 51 to complete it is you launch 2 large missiles out of the station. And I think that the intended target, because we're seeing this on the view screen, is Duke Burger.
Yeah.
So I think we're like nuking Duke Burger or something.
Into Nuke Burger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Now, once you complete the secret level, you go back into the next, which would have been the next level in the order of the levels here. And I think this one is Going Postal. Yes, and of course, it is a post office complete with like mailboxes and pigs that are running the area here. But again, I just want to reiterate like how well these levels work. I think that episode 4 is probably one of my favorite episodes, because they just have these really cool thematic scenes or thematic areas, and in and out of themselves, like going to the post office or the supermarket or a restaurant is not very exciting. Right. But in the context of Duke and how they perceive, I just loved exploring like what a post office looks like in Duke's world.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember at this point, the levels were starting to get really tough. So especially this part I recall where you jump behind this barricade and there's all this ammo, this huge stockpile of everything. And you hit a button to, I think, open where you go next. And they just chunk a ton of enemies at you. And then I realized afterwards that there's a button there that just basically demolishes the area in front of you where all the enemies are piling. And it can take care of them pretty easily.
Yeah, and there's actually kind of multiple waves that come at you. Mm-hmm. And this one actually took me a couple tries to realize, hey, yeah, it's best if you stay back behind the barricades and then use that button to blow stuff up.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in those giant waves, they'll start throwing those pig tanks at you. And so far what I've been seeing is just kind of, it's pretty effective. Just, strafe them, do what you can, launch your rockets. But did either of you figure out the quicker, more ammo-less way to kill them?
No, what's that?
On their backside, they have a nuke symbol, and if you can get close enough to hit it,
Oh,
then you can insta blow them up.
So
You have to run up and actually hit it with your E button, like
That's
you're,
so
like you're hitting the
cool.
button.
That's awesome.
And they would start beeping really quickly, indicating, "Hey, they're about to blow up." And sure enough, their whole ride would just explode.
I had seen that nuke button, but I don't know. I guess I had assumed that was just a weak spot, so I'd always shoot at their backs. But it's hard to control them especially when they're a 2D enemy like that.
So due to time, we did have to skip a couple levels. One of the level I just wanted to briefly talk about was a level called Babeland, which was really funny because there's like these little Mickey Mouse like animatronics that walk around and they'll be like, "Welcome to Babeland," and they just keep saying it. I'm like, how do we get them to shut up? And then eventually I'm like, oh, I just boot them and then kill them. And you know, Babeland is one of these areas that was almost like a fun, like an amusement park sort of thing, complete with a little a duck shooting game, right?
Yep, duck
There's
shooting.
a pirate ride.
Pirate ride, and they had like bumper
Yeah, that was fun.
cars.
Yeah, that was like a Pirates of the Caribbean type ride there, right? From Disney World.
Yeah, it was like a big circular area, and
Yeah,
you're in kind of like a boat thing, and eventually it opens up huge, and there's a ton of enemies and stuff. It was fun.
There's even two ships firing at each other, and
Oh, yeah.
there'll be guys working on cannons, and the cannons will start shooting at you.
Yep.
We're on the very last level here called the Queen, and of course we are killing the Queen of the Aliens herself. This one's a little bit weird because you're actually underwater. It honestly just looks like a large alien from the movie Aliens, right? The thing you have to worry about in this fight, there's two things. One, she keeps spawning a lot of these other aliens that were new for the game that we talked about earlier, and so I found it kind of not very advantageous to worry about them. Just like go ahead and kill the big mama alien.
Yeah.
More importantly, though, it's because it's all underwater. If you don't have scuba gear, you sort of have to go in there, do some damage, and then come back for air. I don't know. Did you guys have scuba gear? Did you have to use my strategy?
I definitely had to go through your strategy,
Yep.
and I even had to go through a few iterations of the boss where I was trying to just kill enough of the enemies that would spawn the ads to think, oh, maybe I can get enough of them down, then work on the boss. Just trying to think of it more like an RPG style, but I was like, no, this is Duke. Just run in and just start exploding things and focus on the boss.
Yeah.
And again, as we saw, there's a little pocket of air, and because the water plane and the ground plane are different, you can actually be completely safe up there.
Yeah.
No one will hurt you.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, so I was going up for air quickly, going down, and it was quite panicky at times, and a lot of times that panicky cost me a couple lives.
Now we're at the very end. Of course, we killed the queen, and Duke went ahead and dealt with her by, using one of his pipe bombs to insert into an orifice there and blow up the queen. So that's the end of Duke. Basically, all 4 episodes completed.
And I really liked at the very end here that all the developers and Duke, they kind of just gave everyone that nod. Here's everyone that worked on the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they made their heads actually really large, like big head mode. So awesome. Any last thoughts on Duke? I mean, I commented I really loved it. I remember as a mid-teen, I played a lot of multiplayer, like 1v1 with my friends, so that was a good time. But yeah, revisiting this game was so refreshing to just go back and be like, yeah, Duke was legitimately fun. And a lot of it had to do with just the level design, the creativity, and the trying to find the secrets.
Yeah, I was the same. Having played a lot of Doom as a kid and then jumping into this, I never actually completed Duke Nukem back in the day. I played maybe a level or two, but for whatever reason, maybe I didn't have it. But it was mechanically kind of refreshing to see some of their own takes on that sort of stuff, adding in the jetpack, having those items that you hold on to and you can use later, like Hollow Duke, etc. And yeah, it was great. It was just really good run and gun fun action.
Ton of fun. It was it was kind of difficult for me to get into at first because I was like, I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for first-person shooters. But then I started looking at it less as an FPS and more like, this is kind of a puzzler. There's a lot of humor in it. I just went into it with a different mindset and had a ton of fun. And I can see why people were so excited and ergo let down with the newer Duke Nukem that was released somewhat recently, which I do want to eventually play, even despite the very mixed reviews on it. I want to check it out to see how they were able to bridge the gaps and everything. And there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about with Duke Nukem, and I feel like I read it somewhere that there was, in the way they were able to design the levels, they created, in essence, their own engine that allowed them to have sloped paths that other first-person shooters of this time didn't really have.
Yeah, they certainly had lots of those. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. It's good point of trivia there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, we wanted to really thank everyone for listening to us. And of course, we really wanted to thank our Patreon supporters. And if you enjoy the Saturday morning gaming show and you want to help support the future episodes, we encourage you to head over to patreon.com/Saturday morning gaming show to learn more. We're going to be changing up some of the rewards there. In particular, one of the things we want to do is, because we don't stream this anymore, offer the ability to still watch the video, and we'll splice together the podcast there, the unedited podcast. And so, and that will actually come out roughly a week earlier than the podcast. So if you're really raring to go and you want some more content there, you'll be able to take a look at that on the Patreon. I haven't figured out what level that's going to be, but you'll be able to get more information on our Discord or on Patreon. And so we're going to be spending the next couple weeks restructuring some of the rewards there. I really encourage you to take a look at the site, or if you have any questions just around specifics, do make sure to come chat with us on the Discord, which you can find either from the information on the podcast, or you can follow us on Saturday M Gaming on Twitter to find the link to our Discord.
So, what are we going to play next?
Well, Alamaxia, I know that you said you weren't interested, or you weren't feeling first-person shooters, but I think we got you now. I think we got you with Duke, and we're going to get you with the next one, hopefully. I've actually never played this game, and I'm super excited to check it out. We're going to be playing Heretic.
Ooh.
So this is a fantasy first-person shooter made by I think it was Raven Software back in the early 90s, and I believe it did use the Doom engine. So it's definitely a darker tone, more serious, I believe, than something like Duke. But if I remember right, the weapons are less about actual guns and more about just kind of like exotic fantasy weaponry. So I'm super excited to take a look at that.
Same.
Now I'm even more excited.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll chat about that in March. But sadly, we have reached the end credits of this episode, and we really wanted to thank everyone for listening to us on the podcast.
And we do release a podcast monthly, so be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or whatever your platform of choice is.
Yeah, and if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at SaturdayMorningGamingShow@gmail.com.
Or follow us on Twitter at Saturday M Gaming.
And of course, we got a special shout out to TechnoAxe for much of the music this episode.
For Saturday Morning Gaming, I'm Alamaxia.
And I'm Lobos.
And I'm the Fat Wizard. We'll see you in March with Heretic.